Hello everyone, Alistair Gold here. It's been a week of firsts for me, really. Had my first live game of the Antonio Conte era at the Tottenham Hotspur Stadium, obviously against Leeds United, which was an experience, positive in the end. And then a couple of days before that, had my first Antonio Conte press conference, and even more notably in person back at Hotspur Way, which was a big deal, really. It'd been more than 18 months since, we've been allowed in that training ground to be able to do the press conferences. So kind of felt a little bit like getting back to some sort of normality. And obviously, terrific to be face to face with these people that you kind of have to write about and essentially kind of work with on a daily basis in the jobs we do. So, yeah, interesting week. What I'm actually going to start off with, because Tottenham have brilliantly timed it, just so I can have a little chat about it in this video, is the financial statement that's come out for the last financial year for Tottenham, which it's got some interesting things in it, to be honest. I think it shows how the club have been able to stabilise, which is a good thing. It also kind of shows just how much football clubs have been bleeding money over the last couple of years of the pandemic. So let's just dive straight into that. We're going to talk about Leeds. We're going to talk about scouting networks as well. We're going to talk about that. We're going to go a little bit more in depth about Conte and kind of some of the ways he is, the ways he has, and how that kind of impacts other people around him. And then we're also going to look forward, and we might have a tiny chat if I've got time about Poch and United and all that sort of stuff as well, right at the end. So, financial stuff. I'll try not to make this boring. Anyone that doesn't like numbers, I'll try not to make this boring. But I mean, the headline figure really is that Spurs made a profit of 97.1 million this year compared to 115.3 million in 2020. And much of that was because the TV revenue from last year was pushed into this season because, well, you were there. The season obviously was suspended, wasn't it, 2 seasons ago? So the TV revenue from the rest of that season then got pushed, which was why the clubs were really kind of worried and in dire straits, especially in that first 6 months after the first lockdown, because all the money was getting pushed onto the TV revenue into the next financial year, which means that technically the profit doesn't look as bad in that sense, because... let me see, I've got the figures here. Yeah, so the TV revenue for the last financial year was 184.4 million, which compared to what it was in 2020 was only 95.2 million. So, it's pretty much half, or double what it was last year. So, when you actually drill down, when they take various things out of the profit, which is, I can't remember the words now, it's something like depreciation and... something else, there's another word, sorry. But essentially the operating profit, which is the profit that Tottenham are able to work with for this financial year, is just 20.5 million. And that's compared to last year was 33.7 million. So you can see the pandemic over the last 2 years, what those figures are and kind of how low their operating profit was. But also it's a really massively to do with European competition as well, because their operating profit. So you've had 20.5 in the last year, 33.7 million in the year before that. But then you go back to 2019, it's 147 million. And in 2018, 151.9 million. So you can see the huge difference that being in the Champions League makes to a team. It's not rocket science. It's not new. You're not going, oh my God, really? That, is pretty obvious. And you're seeing that on paper. And then tied in with a pandemic as well. I mean, you only have to look at last year's financial... the UEFA prize money for last financial year was 23.6 million, and that's compared to 2020 when it got 51.2 million, and that's obviously the after effects of that kind of the last Champions League season they had. You remember when Spurs went out to Leipzig under Mourinho? So that's just almost halved their UEFA prize money just by dropping from the Champions League to the Europa League. And, God knows, what's Europa Conference League going to be like when we see next year's financial, UEFA prize money. So, yeah, so you've got all of that. So that's hopefully giving you a sense of how the profits have shrunk. and what they're able to operate with. And I think one of the biggest indicators as well is this one kind of leapt out to me. So in 2020, the match, like the gate receipts for Tottenham, were £94.5 million for the year. Last year's financial year, the match receipts were 1.9 million. And that's because so many games were played behind closed doors. And it stuffed them. It absolutely stuffed them. I've said this before, so I'm not going to go into huge detail on it, but ultimately, Spurs built this stadium as their game changer, as their big financial boost, as, you know, the money was going to roll in. Pandemic just said, you're right. You're Tottenham Hotspur. You know, fate loves you like that, doesn't it? And it's just essentially slapped it back down again for, like, what was it, more than a year? So Spurs, their financial records show they lost nearly £150 million in the 2 financial years due to the pandemic. The net debt has now gone up to 706 million from 605 last year. That's a lot of that. I think is they refinanced, didn't they, those short-term loans from the COVID financing facility as well, from the government, from the Bank of England, technically. There was another one that they wrapped up as well in it, and they put it into a bond issue. So that kind of fixed that for the long-term stability of the club, but obviously added to the net debt that they've got as well. What else was in there? There was no dividend paid out to any shareholders again. So, you know, no big shares went out there to the powers that be. And once again, they state all the profit does go straight back into the club. They were helped out by new sponsorship deals. They'd cinched the sleeve sponsorship. They had Gettier, the training wear sponsorship as well. Both of those helped. And they thank in their financial statement, well, Daniel Levy in his comments, thank AIA and Nike for kind of sticking with them. I presume that means they didn't waver in their sponsorship payments, which would have been hugely helpful. But it just shows also how Spurs do need to sort out those the stadium naming rights. You know, it's been a long time, I think I've said this before, but maybe the fact that they're more stable financially means that maybe they're not as desperate as they could have been had the pandemic drawn out even more. But it's key to kind of remember as well that, as I was saying about this game-changing stadium, or what they thought it was going to be, they're yet to have a full season in the stadium where they've been able to have full access events the whole time. So, you know, without even talking about the football matches, the amount of football matches you get a year in there as well. You're talking about also the NFL, concerts, boxing, rugby, conferences, all of those events. I know there's a lot of kind of diehard football fans that say, stuff that. That's not what our stadium was for. We're not for that. But all of those events, whatever you want to believe, the money from those events goes straight back into the football club to be able to make it, you know, the football club that can go out then and buy big money players and stuff. That's like it or kind of loathe it. That's what those events also feed into. And, you know, I even saw people going mad. I remember when the Anthony Joshua fight was there, and it's like, you know, there was boxing at White Hart Lane, and you know there was American football at White Hart Lane, and White Hart Lane was used for similar stuff, and the money went back into the football club, and that's exactly what it's done, just in this bigger arena now. So the fact that they haven't been able to have a season where all of that's happened, you have a full season where you've got the football, where you've got all of those things I've just stated, all the other sports and events and concerts and everything. You know, like Lady Gaga was going to play there, wasn't she? Guns N' Roses. I think they've rescheduled. So I think they are still there. Capital Summertime Ball, little things. I say little things like that, maybe to football fans, but actually in terms of revenue, especially NFL as well, it all comes in. And you know, and I know people that go, Levy's lining his pockets, all of this sort of stuff. But you can kind of see when you look into the accounts and everything that that money is going back into the operating side. And we're going to talk about a little bit more of that, because what Daniel Levy says, I'm going to read out a little bit of his, it's a long statement, but this is kind of the bit that I wanted to focus on. The appointments of Fabio Paratici and Antonio Conte are a clear demonstration of our intent and ambition. Since opening the stadium in April 2019, we have spent almost £400 million on players, Player spending is no guarantee of success, and our focus must be on improved recruitment, coaching, fitness, and a competitive mindset. So the first one there that kind of sprang out to my mind, improved recruitment. That also includes managers, head coaches, whatever you want to call them. I'm sorry, but if Daniel Levy is going to make that comment, he's got to wrap himself up in that as well. I'm sure Paratici as well. Nuno Espirito Santo was chosen as their head coach, and whatever reasons, it did not work. He was not the right man at the right time for the right job, to do the right job. And, I'm going to explain exactly why he said that improved recruitment, but I also hope that is reflected upon Daniel Levy himself as well. That was a poor choice. I'm not going to go over old ground too much, but I liked Nuno Espirito Santo as a man. I thought he was a good man. But, you didn't have to be like Mystic Meg to kind of see that it wasn't quite the right fit for what Tottenham needed. And, and I think I said that way back in a video when his name was first being touted. And then again when they were actually in talks with him. And like I say, lovely guy. Really came across well in chatting with him, although it's sometimes difficult to get words out of him. But he was a good man. And I saw a little clip of the Raul Jimenez documentary the BBC have got where you can see Nuno crying as he relives kind of the moment that Raul Jimenez had that awful head injury. And he clearly is a terrific guy, but as a Tottenham Hotspur head coach, it just didn't work. It just wasn't what Tottenham needed in that moment. And if you're talking about improved recruitment, Daniel Levy, you have to look at yourself in that as well. And, you're the man who pressed the green button, the green light, push the button, whatever. I'm kind of amalgamating two different sayings there. But yeah. So, I think that one's an important one. Fitness, definitely, we can see that coming in. There's been a real feeling that in the last couple of years, since Poch left, the fitness has been rather let to subside slightly. And it hasn't been great at the club. And again, that shouldn't have been allowed to happen. But yeah, sorry. The other thing I want to say about the improved recruitment, I think I did this article after I did my last video, so it might not have been around then. So I understood, and I wrote a piece all about it, that Paratici and Steve Hitchen have been overhauling, or are currently in the process of overhauling Tottenham's scouting department, which I'm led to believe there wasn't the greatest investment compared to other clubs at a similar elite level. And what I'm told is that now that this overhaul is going to bring Tottenham in line with other elite clubs in the game of football in terms of what they can spend on that network and just essentially just having people everywhere and just the way they do things. I think it's fair to say the transfers definitely fair to say the transfers have been hit and miss in recent years, and if that is an area where maybe the budget has been slightly, I don't want to say neglected, but just hasn't been a priority, maybe, especially with the finances, like everything we said before about the pandemic and everything. I don't know the reasoning behind it. But what I am led to believe is that Paratici, one of the things he came in as managing director of football, he was told, look, just go through the whole football side of the club and absolutely do what you want, essentially, to all the departments, overhaul them, and that's what he's been doing since he's come in. Apparently, he's been absolutely going through them all and looking at doing real appraisals of the entire department and working out what needs to be more efficient, what needs to be improved, what they're doing wrong. And on the scouting side, he's going to bring in Steve Hitchen as well. They're kind of joint look at that, and it's an interesting one because Steve Hitchen, he gets a lot of flack, and I think a lot of that probably does become of that weird kind of misquote or not misquote, but the taken out of context little clip that we've seen go on Twitter from the Amazon documentary. I've said that a million times. I think he probably gets a bit of a bum rap because of that. But if I'm led to believe that the scouting budget has been hasn't been one of the greatest out there, how much can you do within that? It's a difficult one. You might argue, and you probably could be right, that some of the smaller clubs might not have such a big budget, but they just do a better job of it. So whatever happens now, Paratici and Hitchen getting their heads together, and they are going to raise that scouting department to the levels that, Paratici would have probably been used to at Juventus. Over the 11 years he was there, he would have built their network and set up to the standards that he wants. And you've got Antonio Conte coming in now with his coaches, his 3 fitness coaches as well. So that side of the club should now be raised to a different level. It's quite interesting. In the press area on Sunday, we had just off to our kind of right and behind us, you could see his brother, Antonio Conte's brother, who I'm so sorry, but his first name slipped out of my head. Put it in the comments. I'm sure, actually, as I've said that now, I'll now get 30 people all telling me the name, which is great. But if you've seen it below, you don't have to say it again. But it's really weird because he's not really weird. But what is really weird is he looks like Conte, but with his glasses. With glasses on. It's quite interesting. Just very, very similar. You could definitely not going to. They're definitely brothers. Let's put it that way. But yeah, he does all the analysis side of stuff as well. And he maybe just gets a better view up there of the tactics that you can see on the pitch, and perhaps that played a point because he sprinted down at the half time, was maybe just before half time. Clearly, he was going to pass on all the data and everything to his brother. So yeah, just thought that was quite interesting. So we'll see what the Paratici overhaul of the club does, how it's going to run. You hopefully will see the benefits of that. Maybe too soon for the January window in terms of unearthing gems, but then Paratici probably would be aware of some from his Juventus time. Maybe next summer, though, we'll start to really see a difference in the kind of players that Tottenham identify. Because I think also in the statement from Levy, it said something about how Paratici had the outgoing players in the summer had an average age of 31, I think it said, which surprised me, but apparently it did. Or that's what they say. And then obviously the average age of the players coming in was 22, I think it said. So it's the Tottenham way. It is. It might frustrate the hell out of you. You might be thinking, well, other teams are buying players in their prime, but Tottenham don't operate that way. And especially if they're saying the profits are what they are, that's where improved scouting works. Where you can bring in these young players that will become stars. And it remains to be seen about these transfers, but certainly Romero is looking good. Gil, I do believe, can be a very good player. Emerson, I think, is coming on quite a lot as well. Galini, we'll see whether Conte wants him as that successor to Lloris. And obviously Pape Matar, who was back in the starting lineup for Metz after a couple of games on the bench. So he'll be joining Spurs next summer as well, the 19-year-old Senegalese international. So we shall see. Should we talk about the match? Let's talk about the match. That first half was worse or as bad as probably anything served up in the Nuno time, the Mourinho time, the end of the Poch time. It was dreadful. It was really, really bad. And what it meant that you had this weird kind of, almost like a paradox of, at the start of the game, the stadium announcer said, a big welcome to Antonio Conte, and the whole crowd went, and cheered him. 45 minutes later, the team were being booed off at half-time. And I'm not one for booing, personally. It's as in I'm not bothered if other people do it. It's not as in, it's not something I'd do as a fan at a football match. But what I would say, I do feel that this was actually one of the occasions where it had an effect. I think on some other occasions, maybe it's just, especially if the team's already in a bad way, I think it can just demoralise them further. But I understand it. But what I actually feel like it did on Sunday, it did act as the huge kick up the backside. And even Conte said afterwards in his press conference with us, I agreed with them. They booed and I agreed with them because he thought it was such a bad first half. And it stank. It absolutely stank. If you want to know the honeymoon period is truly over, just watch that first half for Conte, and you can see how frustrated he was on the touchline. He was calling over Harry Kane. He had a big kind of discussion with him. They kept pointing down what was Tottenham's left-hand channel, and just kept pointing down it as if to say there's a problem there. We need to fix it. And I think Sonny came over as well for a bit of a chat about stuff. I'm just trying to fix it because what we could see, or what I could see from where I was that the midfield of, using Conte's nicknames, Winky and Hobby, they were just sitting on the toes, essentially, of the three centre-backs. And then coupled with the wing-backs really not being as advanced as you'd want them to be, Spurs were playing with a 7-3 formation. It was meant to be a 3-4-3, and it ended up being this 7-3 formation. And, this is one of these where the new manager gets, and understandably, gets a big old let-off when it comes to team selections. Because can you imagine if, well, they did, especially Mourinho. Mourinho, I always remember, was at the game against Stamford Bridge, at Stamford Bridge against Chelsea, when Mourinho chose, I think it was like either 8 players, it was either 8 or 9 defensive players in their lineup. Because, I mean, to be fair to him, he had a lot of injuries. That was the one when Bergwijn was up front. But yeah, so Conte picked 8 defensively minded players on Sunday. Had that been Nuno, had that been Jose, had that been maybe Poch towards the end, they got absolutely slaughtered. They would have been in the fans, the media, everything. But because of the new manager kind of bounce, as it were, and good feeling, it wasn't really a thing. But you could see it on the pitch. And Conte admitted afterwards, it was quite interesting that it was actually, that was my question. Was it my question? Because I asked him about the fitness, because Conte's tactics demand this huge level of fitness. So without that huge level of fitness there, which is gained through a proper pre-season with him and his coaches, without that huge fitness, he can't really implement his full tactics. It has to be like a bit of a compromise. And he admitted to me, he said, I was scared. I was scared before the match that we couldn't really do what I wanted us to do because the fitness levels aren't quite there yet. So what he ended up doing was they kind of did this. It was almost like catching them on the break. It was almost like, let's all sit back and then we'll try and whack it and run, which it's not sexy football. That's really not. And he, to be fair to him, and this is what the best managers do, he could see immediately this is not working. We have to go back to essentially the plan A of what we wanted to do. Because what you had, because of this weird 7-3 formation, you had Eric Dyer, who I must stress had a good game defensively, played well. I know there's a few Dyer haters out there, but you look at his game defensively, very little got by him. It was really, really good. But what he did have to do, which is obviously, as people are probably going to pick up on more, is that because of the gap with no midfield, he was having to spray, like an NFL quarterback, like spray these long balls forward, which some of them worked, some of them didn't. There was a good one to Ben Davies, funnily enough. Ben Davies kind of got into the box and maybe just had he been able to keep his feet a little bit better, he might have even scored. But there were a few that were wayward. And the other one that they kept doing, whether it was Dyer or anyone else, kept playing this low ball through the middle, which when it went to Harry Kane, it was a bit different because he's maybe a bit stronger, he can hold the ball up better. But a lot of the time, probably the majority of the time, it went to Lucas in the first half. And Lucas, who, don't worry, Lucas fans, he had a fantastic second half, and I'm going to talk about that. But in the first half, he kept getting this ball put to him, and in his defence, there were a lot of players around him every time, which made it tough. On the other flip side of things, and it is a bugbear of mine about Lucas, is his first touch sometimes isn't great. So with him having his back to the Leeds half, being on the halfway line or so, and having to constantly try to turn, he was losing the ball a lot. He was. His pass percentage at the end of the game was the lowest of any player on the pitch. I think it was something like 62.4, something like that. It was really, really, really low. And it just wasn't working. So I think this is where Conte comes into his own a bit, because, again, I don't want to do down on Nuno Espirito Santo too much, but with Nuno, kind of what you saw is what you get. He, on the touchline and his press conferences, I don't know other way to say this, it doesn't sound horrible, but it wasn't particularly inspiring. He was quite dour, he'd celebrate goals with a punch and all that and stuff, but actually in terms of on the sideline, that's exactly what I'm doing there. This was mainly what you saw him doing. He'd be standing there stroking his chin, look at the game, or he'd be sitting in his seat. He wasn't shouting. I mean, Conte is the other extreme. He's like a madman at times on the touchline. He is kicking every ball. He is living the match. And some people don't like that, Sometimes it goes the other way. But I just feel like when you need inspiration, you need someone who G's you up, you need someone who is constantly, you can hear their voice. Even in the crowd, I think, what was it, 59,989, something like that, the attendance. Even with all that noise, you still hear this man barking your name. There was a moment when you had this little kind of period of play where Lucas was going through and didn't pass to Reguilon, who was in a good position. Reguilon and Lucas had a little bit of a disagreement, a bit of throwing gestures at each other. But then moments later, Reguilon was going through the middle. He'd come inside, and there was a great ball to Emerson on. Emerson, who was completely clear, probably would have gone in and maybe even scored. And Reguilon didn't play the ball. He played a more difficult reverse pass to Kane. And Conte went mad at him, absolutely mad. You can see Reguilon was like, whoa, what have I done, kind of thing. And that's, I think the players need it. You know, you've heard me moan about the players constantly and how I don't like the fact that they get an easy ride and all these managers come and go and it's the same players constantly underperforming, and Conte doesn't let you underperform. You just cannot do that. And I think having Conte go into that dressing room at half-time, and look, I'm not saying I'm privy to how Nuno Espirito Santo was in the dressing room at half-time, changing room at half-time, but clearly, unfortunately, the performances showed that I just don't really believe that the players fully, I don't want to say respected him, but they just didn't do what he wanted them to do, I think is the easiest way of putting it. Whereas I think Conte in that dressing room is like, bang, that's it. He told us afterwards he tweaked the tactics slightly and the plan, which I think was, looking at it, it seemed more that everyone pushed on, didn't do that sitting back thing. The wing backs pushed higher up the pitch. The two midfielders was told, no, don't sit so far back. And essentially everyone was told, stuff it. We're going to play that intense, that pressing game. You are going to get up there. You are going to match Leeds, one of the most energetic, high-tempo teams in the league. You are going to match them man for man. And essentially, if you can't do it, you're going to get substituted. You could see that was the way. They ran so much more. I mean, I think I even have the figures here somewhere. So they were only the second team this season to outrun Leeds. Even in that first half, where they weren't great, they were still half a kilometre more as a team. They ran more than Leeds. But second half, 3.7 kilometres more as a team they ran than Leeds. And that's it. It's no shock. If you work harder, you stand a better chance of winning the game. It's not rocket science. It really isn't. But yeah, the other stats after, compared to the first half, first half I think they had 2 attempts on goal, none on target, which prolonged that long stretch without a shot on target. Technically, I came back and they started to get shots on target again. I think I'm definitely responsible for that. But yeah, after that, whatever happened at half time, second half, including the goals for Højbjerg and Reguilon, Spurs managed 11 attempts on goal, 4 on target. They hit the woodwork 3 times. They had 18 touch in the Leeds box compared to just the 5 in the first half. And like I say, just ran so much more. And, even Winks, Conte said afterwards, he struggled in the first half. He said, but so did the team. And he said his expression was in the second half, he showed his personality. And I'd agree with that. I thought Winks was much improved in the second half. So was Højbjerg. A lot of the players were. I'm fascinated to see what kind of happens with the wing-backs now, because Emerson, for me, is kind of proving thus far what I think I said in the videos when he signed, was that I was told by people like journalists and everything in Spain that Spurs, or there seemed to be this kind of feeling that Spurs were signing this attacking fullback. But actually, in Spain, his defensive side of the game was more what he was known for, and his incredible physical condition, which I think we've seen in the last couple of games. Whereas the attacking side is very much where he's a bit more raw and he needs a lot of work and the technique. And I think that's borne out. I think he got into some decent positions on Sunday, but just the final ball on a few occasions let him down. And Reguilon on the other side, likewise, there were a few iffy passes, but also a few very good crosses. And ultimately, he scored the winning goal. And that was all about the advanced nature of the wing-backs. The fact that even from a free kick, a dire free kick hitting the post or deflected onto the post, Reguilon reacted so much faster than anyone else to just slam it home. And yeah, what I would say about Lucas, just so I'm not sound like I'm just digging out Lucas. Lucas had a really, really good second half. He was probably, I think I actually gave him man of the match. I think he was man of the match for that second half alone, because in the first couple of minutes he set up Kane, who had that great chance, probably should have scored, and it squirmed through and hit the post. Picked out Son, who had a deflected shot that was either deflected shot or cross, I couldn't tell, but either way it hit the crossbar. And then he won the loose ball, didn't he, in the box, to tee it up for Højbjerg to kind of scuff this bouncing shot, which actually, isn't it weird that sometimes when you connect with the ball perfectly, it gets saved or it hits the man. But actually, if you don't quite catch it right, pure fate means that it's the exact trajectory you need. And that was exactly what happened with Højbjerg. He kind of hit this bouncing shot, which went over the sliding challenge and past the goalkeeper into the bottom corner. I thought it was really interesting. He didn't celebrate at all. Absolutely. Højbjerg just went, like, and he said afterwards in the interview, he said, like, I was annoyed. He said that I was just really annoyed at the chances we'd been missing before that. I just wanted to get on with it, get the ball and get going and win this game. It was really good. It's classic Højbjerg. I don't celebrate drawing at home or equalising at home. And that was really good. I love that sort of stuff. Højbjerg, he had a very iffy first half. Second half, he was much better. But I just think the character he is, the inspirational kind of the way he talks, is exactly what you want in that dressing room. You want someone who is not happy at merely equalising. And I love that. I think that's just so key to changing the mentality at Tottenham, players like that. But yeah, who else? So sorry, Lucas, yes. So he teed up Højbjerg, and then he also won the free kick that Dyer hit against the post and Reguilon scored. So Lucas had a big impact in the second half. I think there's a whole other debate to be had about Lucas in terms of will he eventually be a first team regular starter? That's a different thing for me. I think and I understand completely, those who love Lucas, I completely agree with you that he is one of the hardest workers in the team. He looks like he gives a crap, always. And I think that is really important. And I think he is someone that can make something out of nothing when Spurs are struggling. He can run at players. He can get out of tight situations and he can make things happen. 100%. But obviously, I think the flip side to it is, and this is unfortunately a thing that I will always bring up purely because it still exists, is that his goals and assists are not enough for a player of his quality. They're not. I believe he's good enough to be much better than the numbers bear out, And obviously others is the same. This isn't just to him, but I think in terms of him, if he's going to remain as a long-term player in the starting 11, those goals and assists have to go up a lot more. You look at what it is, especially in the Premier League since he's come to Tottenham, and it's not good enough. And the trouble is he ends up painting himself into this corner as more of an impact player from the bench. And I think he deserves more than that, because I do think there's a hell of a lot of quality there. I just think, it may be that Antonio Conte gets the best out of him. I hope he does, because he's a lovely guy. He's a very intelligent guy. It's great to interview. But I could really see this kind of split among the fans. There's some that absolutely adore him, and I understand that. I do think he's a very exciting player to watch, and I think any football fan wants to watch someone that just flies at the defence, goes at top speed, dribbles, all of that. But I just want more end product. At the moment, is there anyone that really deserves to take his place off him? I'd say maybe not. Probably not. But then obviously you go into different ideas. If you change the formation to someone like Ndombele come in. If you haven't seen my question yet, I asked Conte about Ndombele and kind of what his future under him looks like from Ndombele. And it was a really fascinating answer in the pre-match presser about... it's very clear, really. He kind of said, I want Tongi he needs to know that he has to play for the team, not for himself. I thought that was a big statement to make straight off the bat. And bear in mind, he just spent 2 weeks of intensely training training on Dembele closely, in the international break. I thought, that was interesting. It was quite a challenge maybe to him. And yeah, he just said he knows he needs to work harder than anyone else. And I thought that was an important thing as well. And, it's not particularly any different to what previous managers said, but I thought to have said it so quickly into arriving at the club, I thought that was quite a big deal. So, sorry to go off topic a bit from Lucas there, but, that's now on for Tongi to do that. He didn't play a minute against Leeds at all. You'd imagine that he will probably start against Mura. So yeah, another manager that he has to convince. But like I say, he's not going to take Lucas's place at this moment until he does that. So yeah, we'll see. But yeah, with Lucas, he brings a lot of good stuff, and I understand why people really like him. I just want more from him. I'm picky like that. I am. Who else? Harry Kane. Harry Kane, I thought he was one of the big positives to take from the game. He's not the Harry Kane he was yet. He's not at that level. He's not at that sharpness. But what I think probably the biggest criticism from Tottenham fans has been of him is maybe they felt he hasn't shown that desire, that hunger, that real desperate need to succeed at Tottenham Hotspur anymore after what the summer brought and all the mess and the saga. If you were there on Sunday, if you watched the game on Sunday, you will have seen a Harry Kane that was battling for everything. He really was. He was throwing himself at every single ball. He was exhausted at the end. He was running on empty. He had given everything. He had some really nice moments. In that first half especially, he was Spurs' sole spark of creativity. He had to come back. He had to try and bring the wing-backs up the pitch. He tried to thread balls over the top. And anything good that was done essentially came from Harry Kane in that first half. Second half, I think he should have scored. I think he knows he should have scored in that early chance. He had a lovely turn in the box when he showed just such good strength and skill to turn in the box and get the ball away. And like I say, fitness-wise, he was giving everything. And he's bought into everything Conte is bringing. You can see that. He knows that this guy is top-level ambition now. And, Harry Kane, ultimately, he just wanted to win trophies with Tottenham. That's been his sole purpose. And I think he sees a Conte, I think this guy can do it. And there were some good Conte quotes. I'm struggling to remember now, but they were good. In Gazzetta dello Sport, and he was talking about Kane, essentially saying that he wanted, all Kane wants is to win trophies with Tottenham. And he was saying that he's one of these guys that, having worked with him in training, you tell him to do something, and a couple of minutes later, he just does it. It's not difficult for him. He's able to take on board what you ask him to do and produce it. And he says there's a good sign-off line. It's something like, there are very few out there like Harry Kane. And, he loves him. Harry Kane clearly sees that he's now got a top manager to kind of take him on. And I think as we see him get fitter and fitter and fitter, we'll see the old Harry Kane. This is a start with him giving absolutely everything on that pitch, which I agree with the fans. I don't think we've seen that. I've seen him kind of lumbering around at times, looking frustrated, a bit peed off that he didn't get his move probably. And I think now he is completely refocused, and I think that'll be big in the weeks ahead. I thought Sonny looked dangerous at times as well. A lot of run, a lot of sprints. He was a threat to Leeds pretty much every time he got the ball. Just maybe unusually for Sonny, not quite as lethal in the final third as he can be. But that will come. I've said this before. If Conte gets Kane and Son firing, or even gets one of them firing, Spurs are a massively different prospect suddenly straight away, because they're huge. They are two of the Premier League's best. They're two of Europe's best. The world's best, let's go and say. So yeah, it gets them firing and everything changes a lot. What are the nice things? Nice to see Ryan Sessegnon back. I thought that was really, really good for him. I said he was back in training, didn't I? And first match back, he gets not only to be on the bench, but he gets to come on and play. And I think that was big for him, because that showed that Antonio Conte is saying, I like you. And I think you are the natural backup for that role right now in the wing-back slot, which is great. It gives him a real clear path. Sessegnon knows what he's got to do. And actually, his little cameo was quite bright. He won his first header. What was the other one? He had a couple of crosses, didn't he? He ran into the box and did a really good cross, or a decent cross across the box. So that was brilliant for him. And I thought, actually, in terms of substitutes, I thought Davinson Sanchez was magnificent when he came on. He was so good. Japhet Tanganga had got the nod because I think, in Conte's system in the back three, the left-sided and right-sided centre-backs have got a bit of licence to get forward. We saw Ben Davies do it in both of the last couple of games. And for what do you call it? For Tanganga, I kind of understood the point was that he would do similar. It didn't really work for Tanganga. He had a solid game, nothing particularly spectacular. But I thought Sanchez came on, and while his role wasn't really to do that, defending-wise, nothing got by him. He won every header, every tackle. He was strong, and he was really good. It was a real eye-catching one, which I think is big for Conte. And, you know, I've said this before. Again, Sanchez is someone that's got his detractors. I've always felt he's been unfortunate with his defensive partners, have chopped and changed while he was young and getting his education in the Premier League. The likes of Alderweireld and Vertonghen were getting injuries. They were in and out of the team. Dyer was inconsistent. I think if you look back to that first season and with Vertonghen as a stable partner, it was probably Sanchez's best season. And I think I've just seen it's all in there for Sanchez. He's got the full package of being able to do it. It's just about his decision making. And I do really wonder whether Conte coming in, and now he's getting more experience. Sanchez, that is, is he 25 now? Maybe 25, 26, possibly 25. He's at that level now where he should be pushing on. And I just think Conte could do that with him. I really do. I'd be intrigued to see now what happens between now and January and how much he plays. So that was good. 2 subs were good. I can't not talk about the Conte afterwards, the celebrations, can I? So, you know, unless you've been living under a rock, you'll have seen Antonio Conte's, not only his goal celebrations, but the full-time whistle celebrations. He was giving it some. He really was. And I kind of just felt, even analysing the couple of minutes when he walked onto the pitch after the final whistle, even that in itself was quite fascinating. So, if you haven't seen it, Conte just was like, he was doing this, he was really like, almost like it was about to turn into the Incredible Hulk. And he was going round and he was going these massive bear hug slap kind of hugs to every player. And just looking at what little things that happened. So you had Emerson, which quite awkwardly picked Conte up because he was as enthusiastic. I'm hoping Conte sees that as he's enthusiastic as well, not that he's showing that he can pick up his little head coach kind of thing. It was quite a funny moment. Hugo Lloris was so taken aback. He was laughing at Conte coming towards him, which was really cool. It's lovely to see it because Hugo Lloris is quite a bit like the straight man. He's very serious, very composed and calm. Captain of the club, 34 years old. 35 next month, I think he is. He's the oldest statesman, the oldest man in the squad. And I think to see him laughing like, what is this? Was really nice. I thought he was very solid again, Lloris. I'd be stunned if there's not a new contract being offered to Hugo Lloris. I think he's finding this stability now. I think he's playing really, really well. And he's always been an absolute top goalkeeper, but I think he's not making the mistakes on in his game at the moment, which, I think it would be madness not to try and keep him at the football club, to be honest. Because with him there, I don't think you have an issue at goalkeeper. Whereas instead it becomes a problem you have to fix. Galini, still untried really. Untested so much in kind of decent games, and can maybe argue he's been very slightly wobbly in some of the European games as well. Pulled off some good saves, but also some wobbly moments. But yeah, so there was Lloris, that was one. You could hear if you listen to the audio of it, Conte shouts, Hobby! At Pierre-Emile Højbjerg. And goes up and I have a big old hand. Højbjerg says something into his ear. He kind of holds him a little bit longer and says something into his ear. But I'd love to know what he says, or what he said to him. So that was interesting. You had the flip side. You had not everyone was delighted. You had Bergwijn and Matt Doherty. Both of their hugs with him were a little bit awkward. They were both unused subs. They were both frustrated, and you could see that in their face. It depends which way you want to look at it. Some people might look at that and say, whether you've played or not, you should be happy for the team. And there's other people that say you should never be happy at not being able to get on the pitch. There's 2 ways to look at it. I don't know. Maybe I'm slightly veering towards the second. I want players to be annoyed that they're not playing. I want them to push themselves harder to be on that pitch. To be fair to Doherty, his was a little bit of an awkward hug. Conte tried to grab him while also hugging someone else. So it was a little bit awkward. But what I thought was really nice as well, once he'd done the full circuit of the pitch, done that with all the players, gone off to the fans and kind of done a real salute to them and fist pumping. He sought out at the back of the bench Oliver Skipp and Brandon Austin. So Oliver Skipp obviously suspended, and I think was a big loss, especially in that first half. Brandon Austin, the third goalkeeper, and he went over to them and gave them both a bit of a bear hug as well. And I think it's just those little touches, that little bit of man management, isn't it? You know, both of their faces kind of immediately lit up, and you could tell that they kind of, you know, we're part of this. And I think that was really important. Sessegnon's hug was lovely on the pitch as well. You could just see all the relief on his face. Sessegnon's had it tough. He's had so many hamstring problems, and just his face was just lit up. See if you can, there's a photos doing it. I might have even used one for one of my stories after the game. His face was just so lit up, and it was lovely to see. He's 21 years old. You just want to play football. So yeah, that was all good. What else? He was asked afterwards. My colleague Jonathan Veal from the Press Association asked him after my question, I think in the press, he asked him about, do you think Tottenham can make the top four this season? Because, that fourth spot is very much up for grabs. Maybe say Chelsea, City and Liverpool are probably going to start pushing away. But that fourth spot is still up for grabs with so many teams kind of in the state of flux. And, Leicester, I think they've only won, isn't it, 4? Is it 4 of their 12 games? It's not many. United obviously have got their issues. West Ham obviously doing very well, but how European football will continue to affect what isn't the biggest squad in the world as they go on. I feel like Arsenal obviously have had that good run maybe against teams that, including the Spurs, that haven't particularly tested them. It'd be intriguing to see how they now bounce back from the Liverpool kind of mauling. But yeah, essentially that fourth space is kind of there if people want to put together a consistent run. So Conte was asked that, and he was very much like, look, I'm not going to get ahead of myself. What I want, and he actually said 4 teams are ahead. And then he kind of spoke about having had managers in place and also the investment in their squad. So I thought he meant Man U because of the investment that they've done in their squad. But then obviously their manager has gone. And maybe he meant Leicester, potentially. I don't know. But either way, he said, what I want for us, I want us to improve, and I want us to be in a position where if someone does slip up and drop out of that top 4, we're there and ready to capitalise. And someone else said that. I was trying to remember whether it was Mourinho. I think it was Mourinho. Maybe in his first season, possibly. I think that was what he said. Something along those lines. And it's... I can see that. I can understand that. I think that is the way to look at it. I think Spurs, especially the fixtures they've got coming up as well, until the Leicester and Liverpool games, I think this is a chance for them to start to get some momentum and consistency. And why not? Why not? Why not get up there and among them? I've said this before, but I think the second season for Conte is going to be the biggie. It's going to be his first full season, the full pre-season, with 2 transfer windows to have kind of shaped his squad a bit. That's going to be the biggie. But who knows what he could achieve if they really buy into everything that he's saying. And it looks like they are, and those fitness levels keep improving as well. And also, I think the Cups, I think Spurs have got a great chance in some of the Cups this year. You look at the Carabao Cup, they're in the quarter-final already. They've got a home tie against West Ham. The Conference League, win the next 2 games. Is it Group J? They'll finish top. I think they won't have to play an extra game. In that competition, if you're being realistic, using that cliched term, but on paper, there's no one they should really be afraid of in that competition. There clearly at some point will probably be a fateful meeting with Roma and Jose Mourinho, but other than that, it's difficult to look at the names in the hat and say Tottenham should be terrified of them. Cue Tottenham not even getting through the qualification of the group stages. But, I think they should look at that. Obviously, FA Cup begins in January. I think with someone like Conte at the helm, I think Spurs might break their silverware duck. I really think they might. It's what he wants, and it's what you win. If you win a cup this season, then you're telling the likes of Kane and Sonny and the star players. You're saying, there you go. There's your silverware. Next season, though, we're going to be even bigger. We're going to really try and compete at the top of the league and stuff like that. I think that would be a really important building block as well for Conte. So don't be stunned to see kind of really strong lineups in some of these cup competitions as well. So yeah, and then so Mura next. Mura Thursday night. I am heading off to Slovenia. I think it's going to be a bit chilly. I think some of the nights I've looked at the BBC weather forecast are going to be not -4, so I'm going to have to take a few layers. Interested to see Slovenia. I've never been there before, so yeah, we'll try and what I always do, find out what the local dishes are and give them a go. Obviously, the game's not being played at Mura; it's being played in Maribor, which is better in terms of stadium. It's a bit more difficult to get there transport-wise, but hopefully it'll all work. Well, you'll know because you'll either see that I'm out there or you'll see that I'm still in my house, or I've got detained somewhere in some kind of isolation. But yeah, so Mura, I've been intrigued to see whether he really changes it up. Like I said, I think he'll keep a strong core of key players. I wouldn't be shocked if Kane plays again, as he tries to keep improving his fitness. Maybe you give Sonny a rest and someone like Bergwijn comes in. I think Tongi would probably come in. Skippy will be completely fresh. He can come in. Dele Alli is an interesting one. Got on for the end of the game. Yeah, it's an interesting one because it's so difficult. There's players there that need minutes that you could do almost another 11 with. I think maybe the key this time is a bit like Mura at home, is you probably could change it up, but you have to take those big players on your bench as insurance policy. You know, if you're going to have Lucas, Son and Kane on the bench, let's say, like you had against Mura, bring them on and you can change the game. Like you did at home. I would, personally. But like I say, I think Conte will probably go a little bit stronger than I would. And then maybe, I think you can make 5 substitutions, can't you, in that competition. So maybe you go a bit stronger, and then at half-time, if you're doing really well, or after 60 minutes you're doing really well, then you take a load of those players off. Or you do it the other way. I don't know. We'll see. I'm not Antonio Conte, so I'm not going to tell him what to do because he's one of the best managers in the world. Little tiny touch upon Poch to United. I don't know. There may have been developments by the time that this video is finished or by the time you watch this. I'm sure if it does happen, there'll be a lot of Spurs fans will be probably quite disappointed. I think there might be some people in Tottenham quite disappointed because I think there probably is a feeling in Tottenham that Conte, as brilliant as he is, clearly his career shows that other than Juventus, where he was at for 3 years, he spends 2 years at each club. That's kind of his MO. That's not to say that that's a bad thing, good thing, whatever. It's just what his CV shows. So I think a few people at Tottenham, the hope was that the Conte would do what he does, raise Tottenham back up, and then he'd leave just at the time, not saying they want him to leave, but he would choose to leave or something would happen that makes him leave just at the time that maybe Poch would be ready to come back to Tottenham. Clearly, if he goes to United, that is going to very much change that. It'd be an interesting one for United because clearly much better than doing an interim appointment until the end of the season. That would have just kept them in this state of flux. I'd be surprised at PSG. PSG really had no intention of letting Poch go in the summer back to Tottenham. I think Poch would have liked to have come back. Tottenham wanted him to come back. And PSG were like, you can do one kind of thing. They don't need to give in to anyone's demands whatsoever. And I just wonder, has that changed? I mean, the only thing I could maybe say is they're a bit clear in the Ligue 1 table, aren't they now? They maybe started a little bit in the Champions League. Maybe if they believe they can get Zidane and their aim is the Champions League, maybe there's a feeling of, okay, maybe we can let him go now. I think from Poch's point of view, yes, I think the Man U job obviously would appeal to him. Of course it would. They'd give him a bit of time. The philosophy there is not only do you get money to spend, but you also encourage to bring through young players, which he loves doing. It's a good setting for him. It's not an easy job by any stretch of the imagination, but it's not the same environment as PSG. It's not like that. PSG, he's still living in a hotel. His wife and youngest son Maurizio are back in the UK because Maurizio plays for Watford. Obviously, he's got Leonardo, and there's a lot of fair few reports in France that relationship isn't the greatest and how it works. So yeah, I can understand that side of things. But Zidane would be interesting. I'm sure I read way back that Zidane wouldn't consider PSG. It was either because of his Marseille or was it Bordeaux roots? I can't remember what it was, but certainly his name seems to have been suggested a lot in the past 48 hours or so with PSG. So yeah, we'll see what happens there. It will be weird to see him back in the Premier League with another team. He wants to come back to Tottenham one day. He stated that quite openly. Whether that still happens, he had that big lunch with that lunch. I don't know if it was a big or small lunch. He may have just had a sandwich, but it was quite widely publicised lunch with Sir Alex Ferguson, where they discussed, everything. He's a bit of a mentor type or an inspiration for him. So clearly taking on the same role Fergie had, I do think he'd do very good things for United. I don't think it would happen instantly, but he would certainly get them going in the right direction. So I think for Tottenham's point of view, I think they have to hope that that's something that doesn't happen anytime soon. But like I say, there may have been big developments. Who knows by the time that you watch this video. But anyway, it's all about Tottenham. Tottenham and Conte definitely going in the right direction. Still hasn't lost a game yet. 2 victories and 1 draw. Lot of improvements to be made. He says that himself. A lot of work to do. But yeah, so off to Slovenia. See what happens there. And then back to Turf Moor, which, because the trains are absolutely stuffed going up from London, it looks like I'm going to have to do the big old 8-hour round trip drive. So that'll be fun. And that's always a battle at Turf Moor. Every game is always tight and a battle. So, yeah. Big few weeks for Conte to start kind of getting his stuff in there, the foundations laid. And hopefully Tottenham keep on going, keep on improving, and we see some better. Because, like I say, 4th spot is there to be had a battle for, and also those cup competitions are very much there. We need silverware. It's been so long. Something like that just to be able to grab onto and stop the jokes about Tottenham's trophy cabinet being bare or covered in dust or not even having a trophy cabinet, whatever. Tottenham are a club that used to win a lot of silverware back in the day, and they just don't anymore. That needs to be fixed. So, yeah. So there you go. I'm going to head off now. As always, stay safe, stay healthy, look after yourselves, and I shall catch you later. Goodbye.